Howdy guys, Attorney Walter Nunn. I know you come to my specific channel for answers that are no BS situations where I tell you exactly what's going on. I review the law, I apply it. Let's get into it. Remember, like, subscribe, but above all, please leave 5-star reviews. It's in the bio area below. Now here's the deal. What we are seeing is an interesting political game that's being played between Republicans, Democrats, and the world stage. The problem inherent with our political system is that the needs of the people at the bottom are usually used as this whole news kind of like flash flood of emotion. Here's how we could try to help them, and then it dies. This is similar to what's going on with that when it comes to the new introduced bill talking about taxing the oil industry and then passing on those benefits of taxation against the oil industry to the American people. Let's go through it. Business Insider, Democrats introduced a bill on Thursday to tax the largest oil companies, which are recording their biggest profits in years, and use the money to provide quarterly checks to Americans facing sticker shock just about everywhere they look. So what's happening is the Democrats acknowledge that one thing above all that is likely to not get them elected again is the sticker shock of gas prices. Translated again, the sticker shock of being able to travel. Translated again, the sticker shock of reducing your freedom to go and experience things. Translated once more, it's sticker shock towards reducing the bar of what you used to be able to live within. You used to be able to do more stuff. You used to be able to have more fun. RV sales will go down. Diesel trucks will go down. All of these things are affecting how Americans vote. Now, remember, a lot of people who buy RVs tend to fall into the Republican arena. A lot of people who buy diesel trucks tend to fall into the Republican era. In fact, blue-collar workers, a lot of them fall into the Republican arena. Your classic RVers, your hunters, those individuals that are in the oil industry or an industry that involves heavy machinery, they all fall into the Republican side of things. So Democrats are safe when they go to tax that industry more because they know they're not going to get those votes anyways. That's smart politically, very smart. It has some potential problems associated with it, which we'll go into in a little bit. Let's keep reading. The legislation would apply only to large firms like ExxonMobil that produce and import over $300,000 or 300,000 oil barrels a day and exempt smaller companies. The 50% tax would be imposed. The 50% tax. 50% tax. Not 5, not 10, not 30. 50% tax would be imposed on the difference between the current price of barrel and the average price between 2015 and 2019. Now, one of the marks of socialistic communism is where they stop the capacity of anything to make a profit over a certain amount because it's government control to create an environment where people are not able to be innovators, right? The whole idea is that we limit their income to what they're capable of usually earning. This way, they do not pose a threat to the government. Kind of like what Elon is. Elon's a threat to all the governments, right? He's a threat because he's an innovator and he's a billionaire. If you can prevent billionaires, then essentially you've created a scenario where the government is king without anyone changing their gaze to something else. Rep. Ro Khanna of California and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island are the bill's main sponsors. Co-sponsors include Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, Michael Bennet of Colorado, and Sherrod Brown of Ohio. Now, we can now truly sit back and say that these Democratic-based senators have been unsuccessful. You can choose whatever words you want to put in there, but they've been unsuccessful in passing kind of the classics that we were expecting, the SSI Restoration Act, the Social Security 2100 Act, and things like that. The classics, the basics. And as a result of that, they keep signing their name onto what I think are advertising bills, right? They're bills that have a low chance of passing. Now, why do these ideas of super taxing the mega oil industry, super taxing so that any profits they make, they're going to take 50%, boom, they're going to hit them hard. Why are these taxes unlikely to pass in a bill that's going to support the American people? Let's take a look. And I'm going to be going more into this in another video. At the very top of the chain, and we're going to do a bigger version on this in the next video, but this is just a quick summary. At the top of the chain of the list is basically your king. That's President Biden, right? Was President Trump. Then you go President Obama, President Bush, Clintons, etc. Then the next group down, you have your nobles. Nobles are like CEOs, Walmart, Apple, Big Oil, Big Farm, etc. These are your princes, dukes, your earls, counts, viscounts, barons. Then the next level down, right? So you've got your kings, your nobles. Then the next group down would be essentially your knights, the fighting people, and vassals. Vassals are basically, they hold land, which is part of their fief. And essentially they hold this land on behalf of the king that gave it to them to take care of. And as a result, they are giving something, whatever, whether it's allegiance to that king or its troops, whatever. They're giving people or allegiance to hold this massive, massive piece of land. Below that are the merchants, farmers, and craftsmen. That's the group we all kind of fit into that are working. And then below that are the peasants and the serfs. That's basically people who are on SSI, SSDI, unemployed, things like that. It sounds harsh, but that's the truth. That's the reality. If you're feeling offended by that, then just take a moment. Remember, the things that offend you the most are usually very true and scary. So let's think about this again, right? You've got your king, president, your nobles, which are your big company CEOs. Then you've got your knights, vassals, which are your politicians. Then you've got your merchants, farmers, craftsmen. That's your working class. Then you've got your peasants and serfs. Those are people receiving benefits / those who are unemployed. The problem is this. The king likes to stay and remain as king. The nobles, the ones with all the money, the CEOs, those are the ones who basically need the knights and the vassals, these politicians that we have, to go ahead and essentially give pleasantry to the king in their notices so that a bill will be passed by the pen of the king into law in the land. And as a result of that, you have what then becomes the law of the land, right? But there's a kicker here. You've probably heard in all of that not a single bit of mentioning of the merchants, farmers, craftsmen, peasants, and serfs, because they're not usually needed as part of the calculation to make something into law. They're not. That's how it works. You don't need them usually to make law. All right, so I see Diane Little said, I'm lost. It's very simple. You need politicians, the super rich, and the president to pass law. You don't need the merchants, the farmers, the craftsmen, the peasants, and the serfs. You don't need the working class or the unemployed / people who are receiving benefits to pass law. Right, Linda Soto got it, the aristocracy. The aristocrats. These are the individuals, the highborns, who are essentially capable of passing laws that dictate what will happen. As a result of this, we know that because the working class and the unemployed / people receiving benefits, they're last to receive the benefit because the king does not get any pleasure financially from the CEOs or, nobles or dukes or counts, etc. The king doesn't get any money from the working class other than what they already owe in taxes. And what Americans have to pay in taxes, Americans don't control once they've paid those taxes. Which means, essentially, that we are cattle paying money into a system, which then dictates what it will do with our money, with the promise that our constitutional rights will not be violated. Even though they're violated all the time, they promise peace to us through the military, but that's the bottom line, is they essentially create a situation of us not being able to dictate what a large portion of our income ends up going to. I'll do my next video is literally on how politicians own your money, pretty much all of it. So the point is here, we went through these sponsors, right? The co-sponsors, Senator Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Michael Bennet, Sherrod Brown, right? I went through all of them. And all these different sponsors basically are individuals who are supporting a bill that has almost no likelihood of being passed. Sweetie, come here. And as a result of that, the problem is that we essentially now live, hey, sweetie, come here. Sorry, guys. The dogs are fighting because it's late at night. Thank you, Shadow. Come here, sweetie, over here. So what's happening is this. we basically are living in a situation where we can't win this stimulus. The news stations are promoting, yeah, I know, Walter's barking. The news stations are promoting this idea that the Democrats are trying to find a way to give a fourth stimulus, which would equate to, for single filers, around $240 a year, and joint filers around $360 a year. Small promises, lots of news, won't get passed, will be blamed on, you guessed it, the Republicans. Good sir, thank you for the donation. Mistakes are as serious as the results they cause. Indeed, this is true. This is true, especially right now. How are those Jets doing? All right, so with that said, the kicker here, and I'll read the next paragraph, the plan would also establish a quarterly payment program to provide direct payments to Americans struggling with rising prices. The income thresholds in the bill are similar to those of the third stimulus check issued last year. Individual tax filers making under $75,000 and couples making $150,000 will receive payments. At $120 a barrel, single filers would receive $240 a year, and joint filers would get $360. So the problem is not just the cost of essentially, fuel. But I want you to think about something real quick. People who drive less fall into the following two categories. Category number one, those who are unemployed because they don't usually have a car or insurance or the money to put fuel in the car or the maintenance to keep the car up, right? Cool. Option number two, or category number two, are those who are on low benefit amount programs. This could be your welfares, this could be your SSI, your SSDI, very low amount for your retirement, etc. So the trick here is this bill is aiming to specifically fix or make happy the working class people who have to drive to work. This is not designed for those who are on disability benefits. This is not designed for those who are essentially unemployed. This is not designed for those individuals. Now, they put in here, right, that they will create some sort of program to provide direct payments to Americans who are struggling with rising prices. But the problem inherent with this is that it's not enough money, and it's also not directed at the right individuals to make America actually better. So here's the kicker. If we look at this whole situation, we have to ask ourselves, wow, they're going at it over there. Shadow, come here. Go under the desk. You know where you go. Go under the desk. You're tiny. You fit. Okay, good. So here's the bottom line. The problem is that in order for a lot of Americans to not be in this serf, peasant, peon category, they have to have the ability to live life at a certain level. And the whole problem with all of these prices, food, right? That's gone up anywhere from 7 to 30% increase, to gas, right? And you can't use 2021. You can't use the Trump stuff. Everybody goes like, oh, but during Trump, yeah, but that was during, when it was $1 during Trump, that was because of this, nobody was driving. That's not fair. You have to go by essentially pre-pandemic, etc. So the bottom line with this whole thing is, who is this really going to help? And is it enough money to actually help them? So the funny thing is this: if you think about how politicians think, politicians never give you something without receiving something. That's how politicians work. If you want to know what's going to make a great politician, you have to essentially ask yourself, who is the best at getting something back that is more than what they received? Who is a great deal maker? Who is a great bartering person, right? Somebody who can barter with somebody else and always get more. That's what is the great mark of a politician, at least in our system in the USA. It should be who has increased the standard of living the most for the average American. That should be kind of our, you know what I mean? That should be the standard, but it's not. So what we're seeing right now is a unique political situation where the Democrats are watching the standard of living of Americans dive. Now remember, politicians, they're not really that affected by it because they're insulated. The CEOs, big time executives, they're not really affected by it. They're insulated. It's the working class who make up those zillions of votes, right? It's a lot of people there. And they know that the working class is very capable of driving to go essentially put their vote in. So what do they need to do? They need to make sure that they can send out votes by mail so that they could have somebody show up at your door to receive your vote, because they need to basically get the working class votes and those who are unemployed / on benefits. Now, they have not taken advantage of what should have been something the Democrats would be all on top of. And what is that? It's pushing the agenda of essentially having a true monthly benefit increase for the disabled and the retired. That would have gotten them more than enough millions and millions of votes. Because remember, we're talking 17 million votes SSI, SSDI, and then like 60 million plus votes retirement. That's enough votes to change any election. Just the Social Security people receiving Social Security benefits, trumps everything. That's it. Game over. You could win an election for president, Senate, whatever, just based on those receiving Social Security benefits alone. If everybody else voted the same way as they always do, you take that group of people, they always win no matter what. So here's the funny part of this. Screw up number one of the Democratic Party for not taking advantage of the Republicans is that the Democratic Party didn't go after Commissioner Saul. And Commissioner Saul made aggressive moves to restrict the amount of people who are going to be getting benefits, the amount of increase that people are going to see, and kicking people off of benefits so that the Social Security Administration wouldn't have to pay as much. This was under the directive of Trump to make the Social Security Administration more efficient because it wasn't making enough, well, it doesn't make it wasn't taking in enough money to go ahead and basically cover everything going forward into the future in a long-term fashion, right? Retirement, 10, 11 years, you're only going to get 76, 77% of what you're supposed to get 100%. SSDI benefits, you have like 40 something years, 50 years, whatever. But the problem was that an SSI was going up in costs, etc. I'll tell you right now, federal expenditures, 2019 looks like increased 1.1% to 4.5 billion increase. Looks like the total amount for SSI payments for 2019 was 56.2 billion paid out for the total 2019 year. So the kicker here, what's kind of interesting about this situation is that in order for us to basically support those people receiving benefits in America, we have to say, okay, what are we going to give those on SSI, SSDI, retirement, or even Veterans Affairs, things like that? If you doubled that budget, right? So you said 112 and change $billion. You would change the entire layout of how the bottom of the barrel of people receiving so little income that they can barely survive. You would change the entire system, and you would no longer have, quite literally, homeless people who had the capacity to not be homeless financially. Some people who get benefits, a lot of people I have, they get benefits, they still choose to be homeless even if they get the maximum amount. Just, it is the way it is. But for those who financially would make enough money to be housed, they could be housed. Now, what would happen to the housing market if we doubled the SSI amount? All of the SSI rent spots, your Section 8s to private, rental, would go up because there's more money, more competition, more people capable. Instead of people renting essentially one room from a buddy, blah, 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 people would be renting, a single trailer home. Let's say if the person was on SSI and they were receiving around $1,100 a month, they could now begin to actually rent things that were important. Commissioner Saul lowered the level of living for those people that were on SSI, SSDI, and retirement. Now, some of the things he did were highly valid. Let's not be idiots to this. Linda Soda, thank you so much for the $4.99 donation. Yeah, I gave them like 6 treats. I gave them like 6 treats like right before the video, and then another 2 treats before that, and they eat them all. And Sweetie's a Chumbawamba, so she just done. She can bite through anything. Like those really hard toys for dogs. They're like the black toys that the dogs chew on. She chews through those. So here's kind of the thing. If you wanted to fix the problem, right, you wouldn't attack it purely as just a gas increase problem to fund American people. Because we all know these gas increases are just one of the many things that make up why people are now living at a much lower standard. So the Democrats are worried because if people continue to struggle with the basics, right? So water is limited as to how much it's going to increase on your bill. Energy is limited on how much it can increase on your bill. But certain things are not in the control of the government. Not totally, anyways. That's food. That's parts, like spare parts, stuff like that. That's buying things that are basically industry, capitalism-oriented items, like stuff on Amazon. That would be your fuel charges. That would be some of your medications. And all these things are going up drastically, which means that now those politicians that exist out there are trying to find a way to punish an industry, because if they can punish one industry, it will send signals to the other industries like big farm, like computer sales, like phone sales, that they had better not increase their prices along with this record moment where they make lots of profit. And here's why. The Democrats are extremely worried right now because the standard of living has just died for most Americans. And as a result of that, November is going to dictate the entire shift in this country. 400 something House reps, 30 senators. It's a big deal. So what happens now that the potential of a political change is on the cusp of happening, and there's no real insight or potential creation of a fourth stimulus? Well, there's only one fourth stimulus I can tell you. I'm going to be donating $600 to a winner July 4th. We have rules coming out in the not too distant future, but basically if you're a subscriber, you're entered into it. We enter it all into a list, and then from there, we go ahead. We have it do an automated thing where it checks to see who's subscribed to us. From there, it chooses one of those, and then basically that person wins it. So if you subscribe, you're entered to win $600 on July 4th. That's basically the only real fourth stimulus that exists. So with that said, though, I need you to understand the political realm of this other stuff. Democrats have to provide a platform to make enough people happy to continue to vote for them. As a result of that, they have to come out with a bill that's going to actually work to fund Americans who are going to vote for them. Now, funding comes in many ways. It could be a one-time payment. It could be a quarterly thing that's a small amount. It could be basically some sort of tax break. But remember, every time they come out with one of these, it affects different people in different ways, unless it's literally like a one-time cash payment that just gets sent to pretty much everybody under 75K. That was the best method. That was the best model. So what happens is the Republicans, who are always shitty at taking advantage of the Democrats not doing well. They've never been good at it. Live media or media in general, like memes, they're only now starting to catch up. The Republicans basically are holding back, I think, or they're just inadequate or incapable of figuring out how to actually get in front of the ball. If the Republicans wanted to win, they could support the idea of passing benefit increases, lowering essentially the new increases that are happening in the US, and basically getting rid of payroll taxes, but for essentially those taxes that are for the Social Security benefits / Medicare. because the money just isn't there for those. I want to go through something real quick. I'll read through the rest of this article, and then we're going to go specifically into Ukraine and what's going to happen with that money that's just been approved now. And I want to compare that against SSI so that you understand specifically why SSI people are frustrated, why you should be frustrated, because they have money for this and they have money for that, but they don't have money for us. All right, let's keep reading. The bigger thing is that it's going to save everyone money. Kana said in the interview, if you're big oil and you look at this, you're not going to want to pay this tax, and so you're going to be willing to lower prices, right? What we just talked about. Plan faces long odds to become law. Republicans are opposed to tax hikes, and centrist Democrats may balk at the measure as well. A spokesperson for Senator Joe Manchin's office didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Energy prices are spiking in the aftermath of the Russian invasion of Ukraine because of traders shunning Russian oil, which cuts one of the largest oil producers out of global markets. Remember, we were completely energy capable and efficient without everybody else until Biden came in, who did not renew all of the potential permits, shut down more than just the XL pipeline. I don't know why that one got the most fame. I mean, it was a big one, but there were other ones. So just keep that in mind. This was all, unfortunately, created as a situation. None of this was by chance. None of it. Having to buy Russian oil to support America, that was created by design to hurt American industry. Getting rid of pipelines that come in and go out of America. I heard all these arguments of people who are like, oh, that's only going to help Canada or this or that. Guys, if you build a pipeline in the US, they employ many, many, many Americans. And somewhere down the line, there's a tariff. And somewhere down the line, somebody's getting paid to transport parts and do upkeep. Please don't listen to the legacy media and then think what they said is accurate. Please just think a little bit. You just listen to what they say and then do this each time. Take the sentence they gave you right here, put the issue is whether. The issue is whether. Then put the statement they just told you into that, right? The issue is whether the XL pipeline will actually benefit the US. And then after that, put a little statement. Is a true fact. Is a false detail. The issue is whether legacy media statement is a true fact. You're going to sit there and realize a lot of the times they come out with stuff, it's not accurate. The plan, all right, so here we go. The plan faces long odds to become law. Republicans are opposed to tax hikes. The centrist Democrats may balk at the measure as well. The spokesperson for Senator Joe Manchin's office didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Energy prices are spiking in the aftermath, blah, blah, blah. All right, so let's see. Climbing prices prompted firms like ExxonMobil and Chevron to report their biggest profits in years, even before the Kremlin embarked on its military campaign. The most important sentence of this whole article was right there. I'll read it again. Climbing prices of fuel, us to buy at the pump, prompted firms like ExxonMobil and Chevron, big oil providers, right, distributors, even though ExxonMobil, the big thing they do is actually, it's not filling up your car. Everybody knows them from that because it's like, they're advertising every corner with their big thing. But with ExxonMobil, they actually are mostly a company for chemicals. So I don't know if you guys know that, but the whole gasoline thing is a small part of what they do. Even before the Kremlin embarked on its military campaign. So all of these guys had record prices on oil even before the Kremlin did any of this Ukraine stuff. So now you got to understand the game is afoot. The politicians are trying to strip big oil of any profits they're supposed to be making, with the idea of passing it and giving it back to the people. But remember, the people have nothing to give here other than votes. And we're still many months away from November. Let's finish this article real quick, and we'll go ahead and go to the other detail. The average cost of gasoline reached $4.31 a gallon on Thursday, according to AAA. It's likely to creep up further with the U.S. imposing a ban on all Russian energy imports to punish Russian President Vladimir Putin. What's expected with the whole Ukraine thing is that a deal will be struck. And a deal will be struck because Putin and I don't know why this is, has made America fear, and Great Britain and all the other NATO allies, that making them and that border with a NATO ally right there is so dangerous to Putin, apparently, that they're afraid of nuclear war. Even though the US has the capacity to shoot down with lasers from space any of these things that are shot off, they're afraid of him. This is a step that we're taking to inflict further pain on Putin, but there will be costs as well here in the United States, President Joe Biden said Tuesday. But Americans are seeing prices surge across the board, not just when they refill their gas tanks. The Bureau of Labor Statistics released a report Thursday showing prices rose 7.9% compared with a year ago, particularly for furniture, chicken, new cars, and steak. Now remember, that's not an accurate percentage because new cars, you can't even get them because they don't have the chips. So it's actually much higher than that. And then, of course, you have steak. Steak is significantly higher than that at this point. You have furniture, which is everything's fake now. It's none of it's wood unless it's like you bought some secondhand thing. It's all compressed, basically cardboard. That's what it's made out of. Okay. Inflation accelerated to its fastest pace in 4 decades, and SARS, blah, blah, blah. That's just who said that. So we've got inflation at its highest rates. Democrats are eyeing ways to cut costs for families by establishing affordable childcare and reining in prescription drug costs, among other new domestic programs. Yet the bulk of their economic agenda is stalled because of resistance from Republicans and Manchin, a Democrat holdout. In the short run, Democrats have floated suspending the 0.18 a gallon federal gas tax to provide some help at the pump. Like 0.18 is going to really do anything. You know what I mean? This thing's it's going to go over $5 soon. But that seems unlikely to overcome strong Republican resistance as well. And then the article ends. All right. So what you're hearing there is we would love to help the American people, but we don't think the politicians have the stomach for it. And the problem with this whole thing, once again, to go back to this feudal system of, Europe, is that in order to pass a law, you need the president, the king, you need the nobles, the CEOs that have all the money from the big corporations, and then you basically need the knights and the vassals, who are essentially the politicians, to go ahead and pass it on their end to push it through. Nowhere in there are the working class or the unemployed or those receiving benefits. SSI, SSDI, retirement benefits, DAC benefits, etc. So what's happening now is that we have a general zit that's about to pop. The American people hate what's going on with prices. Will they associate that with Democrats? Now, you always have Democrats and Republicans who look to the king, Biden or Trump, and say, he is perfect, he is God. They will always vote that way. It is what it is. But you got a lot of people in the gray area. They're not Jedis, they're not Sith, they're in the middle, right? And they can change elections because there's a heck of a lot of them now. There's a lot of people who look at this situation and say, well, what do I want as a person? A lot of people want things to be cheaper. A lot of people want more freedoms. A lot of people want student loans to be forgiven. A lot of people want their taxes to be decreased, not increased. A lot of people want a fourth stimulus, and a lot of people want a higher standard of living. You could run on those things alone and win almost every election. So now that we've talked about the fourth stimulus, the plan that the Democrats have, that it's unlikely to pass, but we do appreciate that they're coming out with ideas to try and give money to the American people. We appreciate that. Even though all these ideas, like the Rashida Tlaib one, where she was going to take a coin, create a coin with the U.S. government, and then have the U.S. government bless that coin with $1 trillion of worth. These are all, fluffy ideas that are not going to pass. None of them are. I know you'll see on other channels like a new fourth stimulus that's going to be passed. It's not going to pass. It's not going to make it out of committee. It's not the Republicans' fault. It's not the 2 Democrats that are getting beaten up by the Democrats. It's not the middle Democrats. It's not even the left Democrats. It's the extreme left who created this idea, which we appreciate, but it's not going to go anywhere. Okay. Let's talk about big money figures and why you as an American person should be a little cranky. As you know, in ancient Rome, they had these amazing shows. They would set up, 50 elephants versus, well, they'd set up 10 elephants versus 50 lions. They'd just set up great gladiators who would fight and do these amazing acts, and we would watch them. It would be incredible. The gladiators are the show. The crowd is the American people, but specifically those who are the working class and the unemployed and those receiving benefits. Those people sitting around, right, the working for the government area, those were essentially those people who were your vassals and your knights. Those are your politicians. And then you have the people directly around the king. Those are your CEOs. And then you have the king, the president of the United States, President Biden. What's happening is President Biden is looking out on the Coliseum. He's seeing that there is not a good show going on. So now we have Ukraine. Now there's a great show. Wow, wow, wow. We had Black Lives Matter, and then we had COVID, and then we had this, and then we have that. Now we're on Ukraine. Ukraine is keeping the crowd roaring, but it's not roaring in the direction of democratic policies. Now, look, let's realize historically, historical Democrat versus historical Republican. The historical Democrat it's a totally different animal than what we have now. Historical Republican, similar animal, but has changed quite a bit. We all know the political spectrum has gone very left, right? Because the Republicans went way left. You went back 20 years, Republicans were anti, gay people. They still, to some degree, there is that aspect, but we all know they're on the wrong side of history when it comes to that, right? We know that at some point, gay individuals will be able to live their life in America as free people, and they'll be able to be married as free people. We know that Republicans had some shortfallings on essentially dictating what the archetypal American family should be, look like, whatever. They had some shortfallings there. Let's not BS ourselves. It is what it is. Over on the other hand, the Democrats were pushing the identity of helping others, being liberal to go ahead and make it all a better place. And they've gone global and international and planetary, with that idea. We need to save Earth by spending a lot of money and punishing those who create products and then basically make essentially toxins that harm humans. That was a new thing to spend money on. Now, did they use that system of green energy to throw billions of dollars during the Obama era into green companies, which then went out of business, except for one of the major ones, which was then bought by China? Yeah, that was like a weird, fund circle. Usually the way politicians do it is they'll go ahead and basically get funding from the CEOs and big companies to a nonprofit that they own or are on a board with or whatever, and can directly benefit from that. But the whole green energy thing opened up this whole new big area of nonprofits that they could do this whole fund game with. But people are aware of that now. People are smart about it now. So what's happening is this. Now our big, exciting flash is essentially what's called the Ukraine war with Russia. Or I guess Russia's war with Ukraine. March 11, 2022, 6:25 a.m., Associated Press wrote the following. A $13.6 billion emergency package of military and humanitarian aid for besieged Ukraine and its European allies easily won final congressional approval Thursday, hitching a ride on a government-wide spending bill that's 5 months late, but loaded with political prizes for both parties. With Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion killing thousands and forcing over 2 million others to flee, the Senate approved the overall $1.5 trillion overall legislation by 68 to 31 bipartisan margin. Democrats and Republicans have battled this election year over rising inflation, energy policy, and lingering pandemic restrictions, but they've rallied behind sending aid to Ukraine, whose stubborn resilience against brutal force has been inspirational for many voters. Oh, thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. Lucia N. Puentes, thanks for the information. Excellent. Thank you for the fur babies. Excellent. They're sleeping on the couch now. They were fighting before. So, bottom line, just to put this in perspective, $13.6 billion. That's just the new amount. By the time this whole Ukraine thing is over, I believe the United States will have spent on Ukraine and supplementing it right? Assuming that there's not a giant war where the US gets involved, where we're just assuming that we, as the United States, just give money to Ukraine. SSI 2019, let's say 2022 is going to cost we'll just say $58 billion. By the time this whole Ukraine-Russia war ends, an agreement is signed or something like that, or it just rolls out, does its thing, we will probably have given in aid through military items, financial benefits, studies on things that they want to do studies on, probably the entire cost of the 2022 amount to pay to beneficiaries for SSI. So then it begs the question of, if SSI costs that much and we can pull out of our hat that much just to help Ukraine out, then how much money do we really have to play with here that could be going to the American people? So Democrats, the party used to be for the American people. It's not. Let's just be honest about it. It's for essentially mega corporations that make mega donations. It's like your Facebook, stuff like that. Illegal immigrants, vote farming, and basically, essentially, maybe if they get around to it, welfare / SSI benefits. Maybe if they get around to it. November's around the corner. They're running out of time to officially make it happen. I was waiting. I was surprised the first year of Biden's presidency that a lot of these things didn't happen. And now things are getting so bad that it's like, they're like, well, we can't focus on helping the American people. We have to fix other things like Russia and Ukraine and oil. And now the Republicans are not really to be loved on here either. How many bills by the Republicans have been promoted, created, anything, a pen on a piece of paper from a senator? I'd take it. I would take it from the Republicans at this point. How many of them have created a bill at the House, the Senate level to be passed to benefit, right? Other than increasing the cap, right? The cap on how they're going to tax rich people more, right? Which is sad because, the bottom line is that included a lot of not so rich people as well. But the point is this: how many of them have figured out a way to help the American people who are disabled or retired? How many Republicans? Anybody? Oh, I see. Furry Plants and Coins loves truths. No way, I beg to differ. So the point is, I don't see anything at this point that is going to push the Republicans to create a bill that would actually support the disabled or the retired. I don't. So when you're sitting back going like, rah, 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 Brandon, blah, 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 that's fine. Just remember, the disabled and the retired are not part of the plan. Commissioner Saul was the most aggressive commissioner, worked tirelessly to change the system to reduce the likelihood of winning benefits for those things you'd have to win benefits for, and keeping benefits for those benefits that you had won. That's it. That's the reality. He was the most aggressive. He ran the SSA like a for-profit company, and he was successful at making it cheaper for the government. He did his job. That's what his job was. Now, here's kind of the bottom line. So we'll go through this real quick. 1.5 trillion passed, 13.6 billion going specifically to Ukraine. Let's go through this real quick. I'm going to skip all the quotes because it is what it is. Around half the 13.6 billion measure was for arming and equipping Ukraine, and the Pentagon's cost for sending U.S. troops to other Eastern European nations. About the warfare next door, much of the rest includes humanitarian and economic assistance, strengthening regional allies, defenses, and protecting their energy supplies and cybersecurity needs. Republicans strongly backed that spending, but they criticized Biden for moving too timidly, such as in the unresolved dispute with Poland over how that nation could give MiG fighter jets to Ukraine that its pilots know how to fly. Because apparently Poland is afraid of Russia, and America's afraid of Russia, but the only ones not afraid of Russia are Ukraine. While America tries to disarm its citizens and reduce what they can buy when it comes to firearms, it's ironic because the only thing that keeps these countries from trying to invade the US is that there are more United States gun owners than any other country on earth of near equivalent size. Think about that. That's the main reason. It's not the nukes, it's that lots of Americans own firearms. And there's a good reason why. All right, this administration's first instinct is to flinch, wait for international and public pressure to overwhelm them, and then take action only after the opportune moment has passed us by, said Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. White House aides told Congress last month that Biden wanted $6.4 billion to counter Russia's invasion. He ended up formally requesting $10 billion, an amount that it took an eager Congress just a few days to boost to its final figure of $13.6 billion. It makes you wonder. If we can send this much, right? So 13.6, and let's just do a quick math thing here, right? So let's bring up the calculator and figure out specifically how much of that, and that's just the new stuff. That's not all the stuff we've already sent, the troops we're sending to back the border, stuff like that. Let's say that what we've spent so far is 20 billion, right? So let's say essentially it would take, let's make it easy numbers, 60 billion for 2022 funding of SSI. Okay. So if we look at this thing and we say, okay, so 20 of 60 is 1/3, right? 20 makes 60. We could come up with eager politicians, 1/3 just to budget up to this point to support Ukraine. But then we can't come up with 60 to fund SSI to basically cure homelessness in the sense of those who are disabled. Right? So it starts to bring up this question of what inspires politicians to support Americans. Well, the Republicans are not promoting any ideas right now for essentially passing a bill that would support the disabled, the retired, etc. Nothing on the table. Democrats keep creating bills that have no chance of passing. They had no chance during Obama's era, no chance during Trump's era, no chance during Biden's era. But yet Ukraine comes along, people are really excited about it because, and this is what I'm seeing, the Republicans are really excited because it shows and proves all of their like core fundamental freedoms, the things that keep their freedoms alive, are all proven de facto in 2022, the modern era. You need citizens to have firearms, you need citizens to have training, you need citizens to have their own thoughts, you need citizens to be able to go ahead and save their country, right? And then on the other side, you have the left. The left is excited because it's like a love story. Freedom as a love story, the president as a love story. It's like this beautiful romantic thing where they're overcoming this rough, brutish bear of Russia. It's kind of interesting to see the different approaches of how people on the left and right are sold the benefit of it. But the ultimate bottom line is that $13+ billion is going towards it. And we've probably already spent around 7. And that's basically 1/3 of the entire budget for 2022 of around what SSI likely cost. So how do we get people in politics inspired to fix homelessness? And then it started to get me thinking that the problem with fixing homelessness is that A, the working class, they don't want to pay for it. They don't want to pay for it because fixing homelessness means they get taxed more and more of their money of what they hard-earned money. They worked. They spent their life hours working. So what it means is that they have to take more of those hours that they worked where they didn't get to spend them with their family, didn't get to spend them with their pets, didn't get to spend them on vacation. Their vacations are now shittier. They have to take that choice of having a lower standard of living in a country of American dreams and essentially give the benefit of their hard work to the homeless or the disabled, specifically on SSI. That's the problem we face with SSI, a fourth stimulus, things like that. Those who are working don't want to support it. And those who are representing those who are working, the CEOs, they don't want to support it. And those who are manipulated by the CEOs, the politicians, they don't want to support it because all the other people don't want to support it. And the president at the very top, he's not going to support it unless the politicians support it. So the problem is, I don't think we're going to have a real classic example of a fourth stimulus. And I think the future of what this whole stimulus ideology, I know B2B keeps putting out a video like every other week or every day or whatever, about talking about how it's on its way. It is extremely unpopular to fund from people's work those who are not working. That right there, that statement alone is the biggest problem to SSI people not being impoverished to the degree that which they are. That's it. That's the whole thing. Think about that. People who are working don't want to pay for those who are not working. Now, you have some interesting and complex situations that go along with that theory. Do people, modern, younger professionals, want to pay for people who aren't working? They don't. They don't. So, who needs to be worried about that? The retired need to be worried about that. So instead of the youth essentially having the American dream, like a house and cars, and they own them all, and everything's cool, and they have vacations, and only one person has to work, and the other person in the relationship doesn't, they still can afford kids and clothing and all that stuff. Instead of having that, what they have now is the idea that gender rules and gender roles should be abolished, and that both parties, male and female, should work their butts off to afford less than the ownership of their first home. Maybe they could buy one, but it wouldn't be until their 30s. So what's happening here is that these younger people have two heavy bills. They've got their rent bill and they've got their student loan bill. And if these individuals had the capacity to vote, this is going to scare some people as to whether or not they wanted to vote to get rid of their student loans or increase the amount of money they want to spend on the homeless, the SSI people, the SSDI people, or the retired. They're not going to vote to fund any of those. So if there's going to be something that passes for SSI or SSDI or retirement, it has to be before these millennials get older and have the capacity to vote out their student loans. And if the student loans are voted out, yes, they'll have more money to pay for something else, maybe, for example, benefit increases. But in reality, you've got an entire generation, right, the millennials, that grew up always wanting more and always earning enough, but then having to see that money being taken away by the double taxation, regular taxes and student loans. So you're not set up as a disabled group, as a retired group, as a Social Security benefit recipient to succeed on a giant, like where things are going level. So what's happening that I'm seeing is, unless something is passed soon, because the Democrats may potentially lose, in November. Unless something is passed between now and November, don't expect the SSI benefits to increase. Don't expect the SSDI benefits to increase. Don't expect there to be some benefit to the retirement. It's just not going to happen. And here's a thing that you need to understand too. The millennials are getting smarter at a faster rate when it comes to the manipulation of money. YouTube has changed everything. It's like free education on how stuff works. The good channels, the ones that deliver the way it actually is, versus the bad channels. Remember, there used to be a lot more bad channels, and now we're getting fewer and fewer of those, and more of the good channels that teach us the specifics of how to succeed. Remember how there used to be all those channels about, like, here's how I did it, and then they would never tell you how they did it? What's happening is that education is going online. The millennials do not want to live as a slave for the rest of their life. And they have choices about what they want to spend money on and what they don't. The disabled, the SSI people are not even on their register. It's not. There's no button for it. Most millennials don't even know what SSI is, that it exists. They know what retirement is. They have no clue what SSDI benefits are. Oh, fasting star channel. Walter, just full of happy you tonight. Yeah, no, I'm being direct and honest with you guys. This is the problem that we're facing to increase disability benefits. My generation of people don't know what they are, don't care. The government officials, they basically are not inspired because the people are inspired. The CEOs aren't inspired to make a change here because, let's call it like it is, if they can profit, good. If they're not profiting, they're going to bitch and complain, but nothing's going to happen. So ultimately, where are we with this whole thing? There's no fourth stimulus. That's going to likely pass. The only one that's going to pass is that I'm donating $600 to somebody July 4th, and I'll have a whole video on that. This whole Ukraine situation is going to be very expensive for the United States. It is. But if Biden can keep it as a we donate stuff and Ukraine does the dirty work, it'll actually be cheaper than it should, keeps us away from nuclear problems, and let's call it like it is, increases our overall chances of having a better economy going forward. Now, with that said, to kind of close out this video, and I think this is important, as things continue, as these prices increase, your food prices, your tire prices, your chip prices, your, etc. As prices increase, your benefits are not going to be sufficient to pay for those increases. There are lists of things I started to work on back in the day, but got busy because I've got a million things going on, that go through each level of what you would need in order to basically survive going forward. Some of them were simple. Some of them were just, limits on rental amounts. They could only, even in the private market, increase rentals by a certain amount. Basically when it came into benefit increases, we wouldn't use a yearly COLA. We would use a monthly COLA increase. There's all these things that we could do to fix this problem. I'm not a politician. If I ever sold the law firm, I could go do that. I could show you guys how we could fix it. But here's the thing. Nobody is interested in helping the retired and the disabled. They're just not. They're not. The Republicans love Ukraine because it proves everything that they wanted to. The Democrats love Ukraine because it's like this love story of this man overcoming Russia. But nowhere in there with any of this is a plan to provide for those individuals who work their butts off for their entire life, known as the retired, or those who are unable to work, unable to work at a certain level, required to be full-time to be able to exist. That's your vocational allowance through SSDI or SSI, your Title 16, Title 2 base benefit programs. Title 16 is SSI, Title 2 is SSDI. Guys, I'm going to go to bed. I really appreciate everybody coming and watching the show. I hope this was helpful. Please remember to leave 5-star reviews, like, subscribe. Also, I go live every Thursday. I donate 2 hours where I answer questions about disability benefits as a disability attorney. As you know, I don't advertise on this channel about my firm because we have people that call us enough that I'm happy. I'm not trying to change the world I'm not trying to turn into a Morgan & Morgan. I'm not trying to do that. You can always choose an attorney somewhere else. Please don't choose a non-attorney rep. Please actually choose a real attorney if you choose an attorney. That's the only thing I request. Collect your questions for that live session. I've gotten a couple of emails and gifts and things like that. which have proven to me that that live session has helped more people than my law firm has. So let's keep it rolling, because I don't see the nation in general getting excited about helping you. And that's a problem. Guys, I will catch you later. Have a wonderful night, and thank you so much. Bye-bye, guys.